Hi there, Mr. Reardon here. I would like to walk you through a really important tool for writing your AP rhetorical analysis essays, and that is, those are, of course, the outlines. What you might, or of course, you've been practicing rhetorical analysis a lot and gearing up for writing the rhetorical analysis essays over the last several months. And now, pretty soon, as soon as you finish your letter from Birmingham jail essays, we will be adding one more piece to your to the rhetorical analysis unit here, and that, of course, is the timed piece. On the AP exam, 40 minutes are set aside for your writing of the rhetorical analysis essay. So, yes, you do have to write an essay in 40 minutes. There are a number of strategies I'm going to give you for dealing with the time crunch, and it actually makes more sense for me to give you all of those a little bit closer to the exam. But there's one tool that I want you to have right now because I think it'll help you not only on the exam, but with the timed practice essays we'll be doing in class. So, Right, in this presentation, it's only a few slides long. I'm going to walk you through a generic rhetorical analysis outline structure. This outline structure you should memorize. And then, once I have given you the generic structure, I'm going to give you an example of how the structure might be used with Dr. King's I Have a Dream. Of course, this text, I Have a Dream, is much longer than anything you would come across on the AP Lang exam. And so the outline is a little more developed than what I imagine you will be putting together. But I think this example using I Have a Dream will give you a really good sense of uh, the basic structure of the outline. And then from there, you can modify it, abbreviate it, make changes and make it become a tool that's useful for you. Right. Part of your homework assignment after watching this video is to then read through one of the released AP exam prompts. It is, in fact, the prompt that showed up on the 2008 exam here in the United States, not the international exam. And it that passage is not very long. It's really representative of the kind of thing you might come across on the test. And I want you to set yourself a timer and practice the outline structure. And so here we go. Here's the outline structure. So just a little note here, there are a few pieces in bold and everything else is not in bold, right? So the pieces that are in bold, you should copy every time you make an outline, right? You should have this memorized and you should know these are the things I need to write. So introduction, bold, right? You start with a quote, so you just copy down the quote and you might use an ellipse in the middle, right? To make it so you don't have to copy the whole thing, but you know which one you're going to use and where it is in the text, what paragraph or line. Then, of course, why tag all the elements of rhetorical situation. That's map S without the P because purpose comes next, or because purpose comes at the end, rather. You should avoid repetition across Y tag and rhetorical situation. And also, the AP test is going to give you the text and a little paragraph of background and the prompt all together, and that's it. You don't have all the background, so it's very possible you might not have all of the pieces of rhetorical situation, and that's fine. You should use in your introduction whatever pieces the test gives you. So then you, of course, you have x1 and x2, and then you have purpose, and you need to determine what those are right away as soon as you've read the text and start your introduction. Okay, body paragraph 1, you should write TS for topic sentence, and then x1 and z1, right? So just copy them, right? And you might even abbreviate a little bit. Then find your quote. Again, use an ellipse, but make sure you know what quote you're going to use and what paragraph or line it's on. Write down a few things about what language in the quote you plan to unpack and how you plan to unpack it. Just a few words to remind yourself when you go to write the essay. Why piece? What are you going to use as the bridge to get you from the rhetorical device to purpose? Ethos, pathos, logos, or a rhetorical mode, or something else. And then a few words about how you plan to tie back to purpose. Paragraph 2 is very much the same thing. You'll write a topic sentence x2 and z2, right, and just copy them. Or there might be some cases where you have the text is so short or so clear that it only has one central rhetorical purpose. So, of course, you should still have two body paragraphs and you should still analyze two devices, X1 and X2, but both of them feed back into Z1 in different ways, right? So it would be body paragraph 1, X1 to Z1, body paragraph 2, X2 back to Z1. There's only one purpose. And so if you were to do that, you would have X2 and Z1 here in the outline. Just a few words to help you remember what it is that you are going to be referring to and writing for that topic sentence. So you have a quote. Again, don't copy the whole thing. Figure out what you want to use with the citation, indicate the language you want to unpack and how you might go about unpacking it. Um, go about what's your why piece, and then a few words about how you might be tying back to Z2 or in some cases Z1. And then conclusion. This is a final appeal conclusion. Speaker ends by some rhetorical choice, the quote you plan to use, any language you might want to unpack, and then a few words about how you might close the essay. Take what you said about that quote and then give your essay the same kind of majestic finished feeling that a text like "I Have a Dream" has. Right. This you want to be sure your conclusion doesn't sound just like another body paragraph. It needs to sound like a conclusion, but this model will still work as long as you make that modification at its end. And of course, you could always just restate the thesis. That's the kind of conclusion I'm sure you've learned before, and that would work just as well if you're in a time crunch. Alrighty, so here's an example of how the outline might look. So, introduction. Okay, maybe I would use this quote: "I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream," proclaims Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in, right? This is, I just wrote down all the pieces of MapS that I had. Of course, I had all of them, right? Year, August 20th, 1963. Title, "I Have a Dream." Um, Author, Dr. King. Um, Genre is speech. For MapS, medium is speech. It's covered already. Audience is 250,000 civil rights supporters of the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. Right. The purpose doesn't comes later. The subject, prospect of African American civil rights after centuries of violence and oppression, and that statement, of course, also captures the subject, and then speaker, of course, is Dr. King. We already have that. So that's all the pieces. Okay, two devices I'm using here. Metaphors, X1, repetition, X2. Maybe it should be just metaphor, since there's only one here. So purpose, X1, to convey the, or Z1, to convey the intensity of his certainty that justice for the African American community is inevitable, and Z2, to encourage his supporters to practice peace in the pursuit of justice, even in the face of violence. Okay, so paragraph 1, I would need to be sure I write down metaphors and this little reference back to the purpose, certainty of inevitable justice. Okay, the quote I want to use, it goes from instead to bankrupt in paragraph 5. There's this metaphor of being cheated out of money through a bad check, and that is equal to being cheated out of civil rights through unfulfilled promises in the Declaration, because a check is seen as a promise that you have the money to pay. I would probably want to unpack that metaphor. I would tie that to pathos, right? There are these intense negative feelings of the constitutional rights um, that will eventually be delivered, but that aren't. I'm sorry, I think there's an error here. It's supposed to be, right, the intense negative feelings of the intense negative feelings of, someone promising you that they have the money and them not actually having it. And that's sort of similar to constitutional rights or rights promised by the Declaration of Independence that have yet to be delivered, or that are, that is coming back like a bad check. Right. This is the idea, right? Justice is inevitable, as with the writing of a bad check situation, right? Justice will come eventually, right? Someone will eventually have to answer for a bad check, and someone now or people, society now has to answer for the lack of justice for the African American community. This is pathos here, by the way, because these intense negative feelings of being cheated out of a bad check are the right, are something to which even the sort of lukewarm non-black audience in 1963 could relate to. All right, paragraph two. So same kind of idea, topic sentence repetition, X2, and a little reference back to Z2, practice peace. Quote I want to use, we must through soul force, paragraph 8. I might want to unpack we must, followed by these contrasting ideas that come after each piece, right? We must, and then creative protest, physical violence, they're sort of opposite things, right? There are really some intense feelings here associated with this language. Creative protest, something that's creative is good, something that's violent is bad, right? We have these sort of there are these implicit moral agreements in our culture, and they're associated with the connotations of these words. I would probably want to dive into that. And then audience is this the result here is the audience is likely to take to heart the words, and right, his whole purpose is to encourage his supporters to practice the peace. And so if he's convincing enough in the conveyance of the importance of this idea, then he of course will be successful rhetorically. Now, conclusion. King ends by repeating the phrase "Let freedom ring." I would probably just quote "Let freedom ring" one time. It's because it's all over page 4. It's of course an allusion to the Liberty Bell, and I might want to write something like this. Right, one final time, King's final anaphora connects the full power of his dream of equality, the American ideals of freedom, um, and the uh, right, and the far-reaching implications of the movement for equality he and his organization champion. Right, all of these ideas are connected, and I think like that would be a really strong note to end the paper on. So there's an outline. All right, again, a little more complete, a little more thorough than what you might be doing for the much shorter AP essay prompts, but it gives you an idea of how it should look. Alrighty, so let's see here. Moving this out of the way. All right. So you might be thinking, wow, that looks like it'll take a while. Yes, that's true, and that's actually okay. So the more comfortable you are spending more time outlining before you write, the better your timed essays will turn out. After the AP exam, uh, I very consistently got feedback from students last year that the most valuable tool they had from our class across the three kinds of essays was the outline. The outline was very helpful, and making and practicing the outline. Last year's students consistently told me was one of the most powerful, most useful tools for them for making sure they could write these essays. Right. So I recommend the following time breakdown for a rhetorical analysis essay. Right. You take 5 minutes to quickly read and annotate the passage. Right. 5 minutes. That's 1 or 2 minutes per paragraph. And the passages are very rarely longer than 2 columns of text on a full page. The Then you write your outline. Take 10 minutes. Write the whole outline from beginning to end, right? And then use the outline to put together the essay. Rhetorical situation paragraph, 2 body paragraphs, conclusion if you have time, and then 2 more minutes at the very end. Put your pen down, rather. You'll be writing these in pen. Write your essay from read your essay once more from beginning to end. If there's anything that you realize doesn't make sense, you can always add a little thing. And please also don't forget you have 120 minutes on the AP exam to write 3 essays. They don't separate out the 3 essay periods, right? It's not 40 minutes and then you're done, and then 40 minutes and then you're done, and then 55 minutes. It doesn't work like that, right? So or actually, and I should say it's 135 minutes if you count the 15 minutes you get to read the synthesis sources. So you can use that time however you want if you are, because rhetorical analysis is seen by many students as the most challenging of the essays. Many students spend a little more time on the rhetorical analysis and making that one really strong. It might be 50 minutes on rhetorical analysis, 40 minutes on synthesis, plus the 15 minutes for reading the sources, and then 30 minutes only for argument, because many students see argument as the easiest, just because there isn't a thing to read other than a really teeny prompt. So I'm going to ask you now to practice, right? So the homework handout you received is 3 pages long. The front page had all those logistics and the information about finals and things on it. The back page you're taking notes on right now, I hope. And then the third page has a passage on it drawn directly from the actual AP Lang test that students took back in 2008. This prompt and the passage is nearly identical visually and with respect to structure and content that you will to what you'll encounter on the exam in May 2020. Though of course you'll end up with a different prompt and a different passage. So you should grab your phone. You should set a timer for 15 minutes. You could also use onlinestopwatch.com to help you with that. You should read and annotate the passage, crunch out an outline on the same page as your notes as quickly as you can. Right? Imagine you were about to write an essay on this prompt, and you are building an outline to make sure you can write an essay. So if you're not done with the outline before the timer goes off, that's fine. You should clearly mark so I can see when I check your homework where it was that you were in the outline when the timer went off. But then you should finish the outline because I still want you to have the practice of being able to put together an outline. You should, of course, bring this to be checked. All right, that's it. Thank you very much. I hope you found this helpful and useful, and I look forward to seeing your practice in class on Friday or Tuesday.